We've been making funny videos, looking at lower keys. This key feels like it's right in the range, and I think when Cop submitted this to me, he said, this is going to be one that you're going to laugh at. But we've been also trying to laugh and also trying to learn. And this one is simply a much better case for learning. There's some things that happen that are kind of funny, but I think this is a much better opportunity to learn instead. The tank goes about this dungeon in a way that is simply not going to get the job done. And I think this clearly indicates how important the tank role can be, especially in these lower keys, and why you should consider playing it if you're on the fence about playing it, or if you have played it, it might elucidate some of the issues that you might be having that you don't realize it. Let's take a look at this run. Almost like intentionally ironic. This guy says, let's +2 this key. And then the first pull of the dungeon form is just the 2 packs instead of the 3 packs. So like, I think like that really could be the end of the video. Thank you for watching. We'll see you guys in the next one. You just talked about +2 in the key and you don't pull the most aggressive option here. When you say that, then you kind of put yourself in a position where everything else is going to be scrutinized. And right after Heimdall, here we go. Single Stormforged Sentinel. Now, again, I don't want to bash on the route too much, but I literally don't think I've ever seen anyone pull this mob, like at any point in the dungeon. Not in Legion, not in Dragonflight, not at any point. They just pulled a big, 2 packs together at the next segment, which is definitely, I think, I don't know why you wouldn't do that at this point. Having some trouble getting interrupts. We've been talking a lot about going this right side instead of this left side. Apparently, the right side has 1 less mob that needs to be interrupted, but then there's 2 healers. So on a pug, I do think it's better to just always go to the left side, especially if you're going to pull the single Stormforged Sentinel, then definitely choose the one that's most adequate for the pugging metric. He's going to get the single Stormforged Sentinel up here. Now, I do this too. It's not very efficient, but when I was pugging it in Legion, people would always accidentally aggro this thing. And the way they changed count, it was like they were begging you to get it. But now we're going to do a little bit of a strange diversion here. We're going to go for the middle pack. You're going to Herja next. This is recorded on a tyrannical week. You gotta go get Bloodlust up as soon as possible. I have some actual deaths and some problems with this pack too, but in general, as you see, we have 4 minutes left on Bloodlust there, so we're wasting a lot of time. We're just going to have a lot of time in between the first lust and the next lust. We're going to start moving to the left side now. Almost seems like he doesn't want to get this patrol, but of course, this is all going to get aggroed. And here's where it starts to get a little strange. Now, I've definitely never seen anyone do this. This guy is going to pull the entirety of both sides of the hallway. You can do whatever route you want. I really would encourage you to pull what is most comfortable, but this is simply just not the way you can do the dungeon. Like, if you're going to do this, you have to have a plan to get under count elsewhere. It's not actually as much count as it might look like either. And I think when Cop sends me this, he thinks like this is some absurd thing and they're way over count, because throughout the footage, he keeps saying things like we're doing a 150% route through the dungeon, but these mobs do not give as much count as you might think, and that's why you don't really want to pull them. It like almost tricks you into thinking you need to pull it, but it's on one side of the hallway, so you can just walk right by it. So even people in his chat are getting tricked into thinking like that this is going to be some massive amount of count, but in reality, it's only 2 extra packs. Then we're doing stuff like this. We got the maidens here, and we're just pulling 2 of them. Like, we're just stopping and fighting 2 of them. This could be because he doesn't know about backpedaling out of the mechanics, which appears is the case because he's just standing still and eating them. You can actually backpedal out of these mechanics, both of them, both the Mortal Hue and the Breach Armor are little frontals that the mobs do. They will also hit your allies too if you turn them. As you see, Cop just got hit by that. But yeah, so you can easily pull both these packs. These packs are not in any way dangerous. Simply pull them all and then just backpedal every time it happens. And as a tank, I think this is pretty much required. Like, this is a really inefficient part of the dungeon here if you're going to handle it this way. Okay, so we're on to Herja. A lot of people have been talking about like trying to manipulate this boss in a variety of ways, but at the end of the day, this is just a numbers check, and this guy is just going to fail this numbers check immediately. You might not have noticed it, but he actually just randomly uses AMS. I have no idea why. Like, he didn't, I don't even think he took any damage, and Shield of Light is just gonna one-shot him. Just straight up delete his character. He gets the res, so, I guess we kind of save it here, but since he died and the boss didn't move, now the boss is just in the middle of both buffs, and yeah, that's not gonna work out. So you got both buffs channeling on her. This just looks funny to me. This is always something I'll crack up at. This is actually one of the first things we recorded in this series, so if you didn't see that, that was a guy who didn't seem to understand the fight. This guy just died, and Shield of Light coming out, 3, 2, 1, boom, one shot. Thanks for stopping by. But here is like the greatest example of what a low key might look like at times. So obviously this tank is struggling in many different ways. Not sure how she kills me. That's a first. I mean, yeah, I guess it is surprising at one point, but this is the hardest tank breaker in the game. He goes, I was in the right spot, then she one-shot me. Well, that's because you frivolously used AMS for absolutely nothing, and then you didn't have it up. That's like the best spell in the game to deal with this mechanic. Cop said she had both buffs, but at the first time he got one-shot, that did not happen. The mage says, save runic shield. So even the mage notices tank frivolously is wasting his cooldowns. There's even some suggestion that this guy's trying to like do this fancy strat where you invert them or whatever, but I do not believe that's happening here. Just the kind of the overthinking it, and not only that, just kind of like the way people try to solve issues in these keys. It's very obvious. Like, you died because you misused your CDs, and that's Blood Decay in a nutshell, dude. Like, that's why this spec can be hard to play for new players, and this time he is going to easily survive it, you know, probably plan things out better this time. And you'll see here, Shield of Light, AMS up, boom. Doesn't even take damage. Health pool literally doesn't go down. AMS doesn't even break. Now we're going to go ahead and pull the 2 Sentinels here. Again, you know, let's not bash on the route, but I will say, like, if you're going to pull these mobs, which I guess a lot of people are just straight up skipping them, what you really want to do is think about doing it the way I've been doing it. Grab these mobs, get threat on them, get some dots on them, and then run them up the ramp. They will they will take damage from the dots as they're running. You'll be so far away from them, they won't be doing anything to you, and you'll be able to get them killed on top of the king that does not have any mechanics that you need to interrupt. Here we go again with this whole pulling the entire hallway thing. This also just kind of confuses the group. I think like in a pug, you know, setting your DPS up for success is definitely beneficial, especially in like the lower keys, you know, just don't overthink things. But you see like even in the chat, like that's the level of confusion that's probably going through the heads of some of the damage dealers right now. Because like Cops is playing it too in this video. He thinks that this is like a super bad route and that this is really suboptimal, and he's confused by it and he doesn't know how to proceed. It's really, in reality, it's really not as bad as it looks, but it's just confusing people. And it's kind of just getting out ahead of these mistakes and kind of just thinking about what the psychology of the group might look like after doing things like this. And again, unfortunately, you know, when you say let's double upgrade the key and then you get one shot by Herja, it's like you kind of got the microscope on you there. So we're going to come down here. We're just going to have the Storm Drake, and that's it. He's just going to pull that one mob in this area. He's going to pull both packs of the wargs here, so totaling 5 wargs. The way I do it is I try to get 4 and then 3. A lot of people probably aren't clearing out the stuff on the left. Yeah, somebody says it's 84 before going upstairs. The problem is, then what do you do in this area? So this is why I started adding these bulls to my route, because they're just in the way. I don't really know exactly how people are getting by them and stuff, but we got 87.41 and we just like literally run through a mob. I'm not really sure what the guy's strategy is here, but here we go. Just got an anger hoof bull just kind of standing here. The fact that it like snaps up here is kind of funny to me, but this is going to get really funny in a second. Lol, the bull's just like snapping up the ramp, and it's like, look at these speedy. Speedy bull, speedy bull. Hank just types a clean question mark here. Look at, there's a second one now. There's the second bull. Yeah, so we're like 3% over count just by routing. And then we just like running through mobs that I mean, to my knowledge, are not skippable. Certainly not skippable the way everybody skipped. I think the truth is here is that the tank just didn't really have a good plan moving forward. Probably didn't fully understand what is and isn't important in the route, and just kind of just wunged it. But this is the perfect example of a low key for that reason, because unfortunately, like no matter what key you're doing, the tank does need to have a plan. Sir Dialot in Cops chat actually makes a really good point. He says, I don't get how he tries to do the hardest stuff, but doesn't have a set idea about what mobs he wants to pull. And that's really the pug mentality in a nutshell, and that's what makes tanking so important at any key level. And this is why I would always encourage you guys to tank. If you're out there struggling, especially as a DPS, I would really encourage you to consider tanking. You'd be surprised at how much easier the role is than you might think it is. I know it offers a lot of anxiety-inducing moments. You have so much more control over the success of the key that these kind of things are just completely eliminated. Like, this mistake is not the only reason this key is not successful, but if you don't ever have this situation where you're just pulling way more count than you need, you're going to immediately succeed more. But when you're a DPS, you have no agency over that. Like, the tank has full control over that. You can't really stop him other than trying to get into an argument with him. But one last bit of hilarity, you can barely see it, but the guy is actually going to use the shield and then cancel it or something like that. I don't know if he used it too early or what happens there, but stopping early and then everybody dies to not being in the shield. The tank says, this is brutal. Then he says this. Another week of bad affixes. What does any of this have to do with the fixes? I mean, it really doesn't have anything to do with the fixes. Sanguine, explosive, tyrannical weak. Those are kind of problems that you see in keys where people are just unable to diagnose the actual issues, unable to recognize mistakes, unable to fix mistakes because they're unable to recognize those mistakes as well. That's why I like recording the runs and why I like going over them, because you get a lot of opportunity to see things that you might not have seen in the heat of the moment. And I don't know what he thinks happened there. It's just important that you find these mistakes and you learn from them. And I worry about a statement like that where just a bunch of small mistakes ultimately lead to the death of a very, very, very easy key. And this is like widely over time. And I do think a lot of that was simply just on an inexperienced tank coming into a key that maybe they needed a little bit more insight on, maybe a little bit more practice. And then when he says something like, this is brutal, these affixes suck, really makes you worry, doesn't it? But almost serendipitously, we finished this key at 49 minutes. So yeah, 11 minutes over time, and Cop still gets 6 points from a 16. So really everything that you would need to see in a lower key. And I hope that people could learn from this. I hope that people can understand exactly why the tank roll is so crucial now. So much of this stuff could have been solved so easily, and this key would have been, frankly, like much smoother if we just took better approaches to some of these strategy elements, had a better understanding from the tank roll. A lot of the, obviously, 2 wipes to bosses, frankly, purely because of the tank roll. So that's how important the tank roll could be. Perhaps if you're on the fence, like better understanding of why the tank roll is something you should consider, what you could think about, and what minor mistakes, even if you're already tanking, what minor mistakes might be contributing to a lack of success, myself included. A lot of this can be extrapolated all the way up the food chain. So thank you for watching. If you guys have any questions, let me know. Otherwise, we'll see you guys in the next one.